Okay, Piss and Vinegar Day 84, I think. This day I combined a bunch of shit because I took a day off this week, which normally I don't. But if I do, this new way I train, where I train every single day, something has to get combined with another day. So today I did arm wrestling plus my function day or my high intensity cardio day. I don't know what to really name it right now. But today it's kind of a mixed bag day. So I do arm wrestling training, and this was not ideal because I did the arm wrestling first. The rest of the functional training essentially was diminished because I didn't have as much to give. But also I strained my groin muscle, one of my groin muscles on my right side the other day. My dog ran out onto the street after a pit bull because my dog doesn't like pit bulls because, well, who does really? And he just doesn't like pit bulls. He's friendly with every single other dog species or breeds rather. Loves dogs, gets along like a house on fire with any human or dog except for pit bulls. He fucking hates them with a burning passion. So I was sprinting after him at Mach 10 speed, and that did my groin muscle. So I couldn't do a lot of the different things I wanted to do on function day today, like sprints and some other kind of high intensity cardio stuff, because my groin wasn't up to par for that. And also I want to make sure that the groin is fully recovered for my leg day on Wednesday. So today was a bit all over the place and wasn't ideal, but it was generally pretty good, especially in the arm wrestling component. My side pressure just randomly last week, this new weight, I could barely do it. If you watch last session of arm wrestling session, I could barely move this weight. It was just feeling super uncomfortable and hurting my elbow, and the strength wasn't there. Today it moved like fucking nothing. I was doing 41 kilos like it was nothing. I was repping it out back to back. Normally I have to take a pause in between reps on side pressure because of the pain and stuff, but I was just banging it out. 41 felt like nothing. So I don't know if it was because last week I only did one set and then just didn't do side pressure after that because it was hurting, and maybe it indicates that my side pressure has to be done every 2 weeks rather than once a week. So next week what I'll see is if the side pressure training is feeling super weak next Sunday, it means I need more recovery than 1 week, because it is a very taxing movement. The tendons and ligaments take most of the toll, and as we all know, tendons and ligaments take about 10 times longer to heal and recover than the muscles do, because there's far less blood flow in there. So it might be a matter of doing side pressure heavy on 1 week with the 5 sets of 5, and then the week after I do more of a active recovery or a high rep, high volume sort of day where I bang out a bunch of high reps to get blood in the area to then actively recover for the next Sunday where I do it again. And so we'll see what happens next Sunday. But everything was up quite a lot with the arm wrestling day, just like every other lift and every other session where my lifts are going up quite tremendously. The arm wrestling just the same. So that's really good. The arm wrestling was great. It just wasn't so much the function day, or I'll just call it high intensity cardio day from now on. That happens to have a few things that help me function better throughout my actual lifting days, where I do legs or chest or whatever. Because last Sunday when I did this, I'm not explaining again, but last Sunday I explained how I don't actually believe in functional training as they typically market it as. I believe in functional training to be a slightly different thing, where you work on components that are smaller, that are neglected, to make sure that the larger picture works correctly. You oil the cogs and gears so the whole motor works. So yeah, the arm wrestling day was really good, and the more and more weight that goes up, the more I compare myself to professionals and semi-professionals and amateurs and stuff, and the weights are getting there. I mean, certain lifts are starting to get to the point where I'm actually what would be considered somewhat competitive. Again, you got to take this with a grain of salt, because the actual lifts you do in the gym don't necessarily carry over to your strength on the table as much as people think it might, especially depending on your leverages. Like, it is demonstrable in numerous different arm wrestlers where people will go, that guy is so much stronger, he's lifting all that weight, look at him lift all that weight, and then he gets crushed by the guy he's versing who doesn't lift anywhere as much weights but is far more technical or has better leverages or bigger hands or whatever it might be. So I got to be careful with my ego here, because I'm lifting all these decently heavy weights relative to other arm wrestlers. But again, I've never been to an actual arm wrestling meetup where people who arm wrestle on a regular basis arm wrestle. So I really have no way to know where I'm at, other than the fact that I'm lifting some pretty decent weights until I go down. And now that I'm in a position that I can go down to the arm wrestling meetup nearest to me, which is about an hour away, I might start doing that soon. They have a pretty big gathering in Sydney, Australia, in a place called Penrith, where they have plenty of dudes down there. None of the real big names like Ryan Bowen or I can't remember the other ones, Lachlan Adair, a few other guys who are the representatives of Australia. They're typically in Queensland and New Zealand, but I'm sure there's plenty of really good dudes down in Sydney who are knocking on that door. And I mean, I probably couldn't do a fucking thing to anyone that's high level down there. It would be other amateurs. So it's exciting to see. Any of you guys that watched this series that do like arm wrestling, if you do go down and arm wrestle real people rather than the weights, you probably already know the difference. And this new machine that I've built, the PVC pronation machine, is fucking sick. I love this fucking thing. It just feels so good. It trains not just the pronator, but it also trains your wrist's pronator. So there's two different pronators in your forearm. One is at the wrist, one is located at the forearm attachment. And if you just grab your hand right now and kind of try to pull it out of pronation or pull it into supination whilst keeping your arm tight, it's hard to explain, but if you understand what I mean, your ulnar bone doesn't actually attach to your hand. So what this does is it actively makes it so that your hand doesn't supinate or isn't able to be pronated over by another person's hand, not just through the forearm, but through that kind of wrist attachment. It's kind of hard to explain, and maybe next session I'll kind of give you a visual cue of what it looks like. But essentially, your hand can be taken from two angles. Your whole radius and ulnar can just simply be pronated out by someone pronating or cupping through your wrist. But this motion allows you to really get that hand and wrist stability through the pronation. It's kind of hard to explain. Maybe next time I do my arm wrestling session, I'll show you guys what I mean by this. But there are two ways that your arm can essentially be compromised. And the lesser known way is essentially through the wrist, because it's not like a full rotation, otherwise you'd break your fucking wrist, but it's like maybe a centimeter or two of give that goes through the thumb and through the ulnar to hand attachment that doesn't actually attach to the bone or to the wrist or the hand. I'm fucking all over the place with my words here, but basically this movement trains that. It allows your wrist to stay stable through pronation. Rather than just pronating through the forearm, you're pronating through the wrist. That's basically the long way of explaining what in short can be summed up as you're training the wrist's pronator versus the forearm. You're getting more stability rather than getting strength, if that makes any sense. So I like this. It's really training my hand and wrist versus just the pronator. And then after this movement, I do more of an isolation movement in my pronator. Currently patting all the hair off my dog. All this hair was flying around. It was kind of gross. It's summer in Australia now, or tail end of summer, or getting into summer rather. My dog is shedding like crazy. There's fucking hair everywhere throughout my gym. Just bought a wireless vacuum to make sure this place is a bit cleaner, because as you can see in the background, there's a lot of dirt and kind of leaves and just dust on the floor of my fucking gym. So I bought a vacuum cleaner, a wireless one, so that it is spotless and more presentable for you, my clients, and myself. My left side on this pronation movement that I've built, and it's not my idea because there are machines specifically built for this. I just made one because it was cheap and easy to make. Engen Terzi is kind of the guy that popularized these. He's a pronation king of sorts. He has a machine specifically for this that probably functions a little smoother than this, but this gets the job done. My left side is far weaker on the pronation. There's a few reasons for that. Generally, I'm just right-handed, but two, for a long time, I've been training my right forearm on a pretty regular, generally daily basis. I'll get something done, whether it be pronation or cupping or whatever. So my right arm is generally stronger, but especially through the pronator. Like even the muscular development, my right pronator is far more developed than my left, which is part of my giant pumpkin training, or this is a training system that Devin Lorat popularized, and a lot of people do it nowadays. But basically, I train my right forearm on a pretty regular basis, and thus my pronator on the right can do 35 kilos on that previous PVC equipment machine that I made, whereas my left can only do 25. So it's pretty incredible how much stronger you can get one side of your body if you just train it on a regular basis and increase that nuclei and satellite cell and your neurological adaptations to that side. And for me, I'm right-handed arm wrestler, so it makes more sense to make my right arm as dominant as I can possibly get it. The left is just there for the party, as they would say, or just there to have fun. There's nothing really special about it. It's not that strong. It's probably better than the average person, but if someone trains their arm wrestling or trains their left arm specifically, and you only train your right arm specifically, they're gonna fucking crush your left arm, and vice versa. So yeah, really just honing in on that right arm. And the only time that the left forearm really gets any stimulus is on this once a week high intensity session, whereas the right gets plenty every single day. And now on the forearm extensors, this is going up quite a lot also. It's such a small muscle in the forearm extensors, and yet I've made tremendous gain in it over the last year or so. Went from, again, probably 10 kilos on these up to now 32 kilos for, I think, 10 reps a day. So these are getting stronger and stronger, and it's only improving my physique and my forearm and elbow health. And then so onto the functional part of the training. Today, my hip wouldn't allow me to do a bunch of shit, so I just decided I'd just do a bit of boxing. But even the boxing was giving me issues. Certain punches like hooks, my left hook would give me a twinge. So it was just very loose boxing. And again, I haven't boxed in years, so I'm just kind of slowly getting back into it, honing my technique a little bit, and trying to condition my shoulders, because my shoulders, my front deltoid just really fucking tires out real quick. And my technique's pretty fucking sloppy. I used to be a bit better. Never been great, because I've never done any formal training. And I might actually start going to a boxing coach every now and then in the future. I'm not sure. I really enjoy boxing, and I don't want to spar with people per se, because I don't want the brain trauma. If you can get a good sparring partner that's just going to do 15-20% with you and nothing more, then that's great, and that would be cool. But in boxing gyms, you never know. Like, you get up with the wrong guy. Not that I would know, because I've actually never really sparred with anyone that knows how to box. I've sparred with mates who are the same same thing with me, where they just never really done it. They've never gone into an actual gym and learnt it. So I've sparred with just absolute fucking amateurs that don't know what the fuck they're doing. So all my boxing is self-taught, but yeah, I don't want to risk going into a boxing gym and getting my head fucking caved in by some big Maori guy that doesn't understand that we are doing 20% sparring, not 100%. So I don't want to get the injuries or any of that. And it's not interesting enough for me to go doing boxing like 3 or 4 times a week to actually generally get good at it. It'd be something that I do, once every few weeks, just to like touch up on my technique and stuff, just so that I have generally capable skills. And as of right now, I'm okay at it. I'm not like throwing absolute, shitty haymaking arm punches, but by no means am I technically efficient as someone who's been focusing on it for a year or so, like on a regular basis. Same with like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like, I'd like to get somewhat efficient at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, just for, the ability to be able to do it, but also if I ever have to be in a self-defense situation where it requires, rear naked chokes or arm bars, or anything that requires groundwork, which I already have a okay ability at that, because I used to do judo as a kid, and I got to about brown belt level, albeit I was a child. So a lot of that skill went away, and I was a brown belt for a child, not a brown belt for an adult. There's a huge difference in ability, but my groundwork is okay. Like, I could probably roll with a blue belt or whatever and hold my own, but anything beyond that, they'd fucking rape me, and they'd rape just about anybody if you don't really know what you're doing. Like, it's just a totally different thing. These guys are like serpents flying around your fucking body, just looking for different areas where they can break your arms and choke you out, and if they want to, they can kill you, and that's not a good feeling. So same with BJJ. It'd be cool. There is a BJJ dojo near me. Unlike boxing, unfortunately. So I could potentially start going there and doing that every now and then, just to get technically efficient enough that I could say, I can roll with just about anyone other than another fellow BJJ practitioner. But then again, you don't know who you're rolling with, and BJJ is very injury heavy in the sense that you don't get any brain damage, which is excellent. But you don't get you get all these like nagging things like tweaks in the neck and back and elbows and tendons and ligaments and shit. And then that takes away from my true love, which is lifting weights. So any sports that require potential injuries or cause potential injuries, they're all very they all seem very romantic to me. I'd love to do them. I'd love to play rugby union. I love rugby union, but again, I don't want to run headfirst into a 6'5" Maori guy who weighs 140 kilos and have his head slam into my head, or his knee land on my knee and fucking cripple me for 6 months and not be able to lift weights. So it's unfortunate that sports get you injured, because they're all very fun. They're great forms of cardio, and in terms of boxing and BJJ and stuff, they're great for learning how to defend yourself. But at this point, I'm physically strong enough and understand generic boxing technique to the point where I could probably defend myself against most people. I kind of touched on this last week, where it's like if you're in on the street and you have like amateur levels of boxing, you can beat up just about anybody if you're strong and big enough. And then anybody that can beat you is unlikely to fight you anyway, because a guy that generally knows how to box, or is someone that is like a professional boxer or Golden Gloves boxer, or someone that just generally can box, is not going to want to fight you because their ego's in check. They don't have anything to prove. They get all their fucking neurotic energy out in the gym. And if you do ever get in that situation where you're about to fight some guy who's squaring up and bobbing their head and shit, just fucking run away, because that is not a good dude to fight. So kind of repeating myself from last week a little bit, but yeah, I think I might get into a boxing gym, maybe, if I can find one close enough that I can go to, once or twice a month, just to kind of work on my technique a little bit, just so I don't look like a total fucking idiot in these videos when I'm doing my boxing as cardio. Because for me, this is more about cardio. Like, I am thinking about my technique while doing this, but I'm also just trying to get my heart rate up and getting out of breath, because most cardio is just kind of fucking boring, and boxing is quite fun. It's fun piecing combos together, and it gets more fun as you get better at it. And I've been better at it before, when I spent 4 or 5 times a week, where I'd spend an hour watching my footage and watching tutorials on YouTube and just really being super diligent. And it got more and more fun as you got technically efficient at it, because when you first start with boxing, unless you have someone holding pads who's telling you what to do, it's boring, because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You're just throwing all these retarded punches. Whereas if you have decent ability and you can string all these combos together, and you can string the footwork together, and you can then start shadow boxing and generally imagining fighting another individual, because you are good enough now that you can think in the back of your mind, if that shadow individual, fake individual that I'm shadow boxing with is throwing a right hand, that means I need to duck under my left, etc. All those things that if you first start, you can't think about those consciously. They have to be subconscious, otherwise it's just all slow, sloppy, and boring. So it's fun. It's a fun form of cardio, and I don't find riding a bike or going for a jog or any of that steady state shit fun. So I think in order to get more cardio done, because I fucking hate cardio, I need to be able to get better at boxing in order to make it more fun, so that I'm more likely to do it. And now I'm moving on to the side steps. So getting the glute medius and minimus trained here. This is more so the functional stuff, so not so much intensive cardio or anything, just getting the smaller little muscles trained. And then I superset this with tibialis raises, which is the muscle that runs over the front of the shin. It's very important that you train these for knee health and ankle health and just sprinting ability, running ability, just general overall function. So they have numerous different benefits for those of you who like to do kind of medium intensity running or even low intensity running, like 30 to 60 minute jogs. Tibialis raises are super effective and good for your knee health, shin health, ankle health, If you get shin splints, they can very much work into preventing those. If you have strong tibialis or tibialis muscles, they will help with your shin splints. They'll help with your ankle health, knees, repeating myself. But yeah, especially if you're a runner, you should do them. But everyone should really do these because they're great for knee health, which if you're a big dude who lifts weights, you know, you weigh 80, 90, 100 kilos, the knees can potentially start giving out because realistically, the average man of 5'9" should only weigh about 70 to 75 kilos, or like 165 pounds. So bodybuilding artificially makes you essentially an obese person or an overweight person. Obese would be a roider, but if you're, say, I'm 6 foot, I'm 87 kilos right now, that's overweight for me. That's overweight even though I have a visible V-line in my abs. I'm not super lean, but by all means, I'm not overweight. I have a flat stomach. I don't have man boobs. I'm lean. I have bicep veins. And yet, the BMI scale would show that I'm overweight because I'm heavy. I weigh more than the average bloke because I got a bunch of muscle mass. And although not as unhealthy as if it was fat, it's still weight. Weight is not necessarily great. This is why Asians and the smallest people on the planet live longer than the rest of us. Even small people in poverty, just from the fact that they are smaller. The average Japanese man is 5'7". The average Japanese woman is like 4'10". These people weigh like 10, 20, 30 kilos lighter than the average Westerner, and thus their joints don't have as much stress on them, their heart doesn't have as much stress on it, and thus they live longer. So as far as being healthy and living longer, being heavy isn't necessarily good. And I've kind of missed my point here, but I've kind of gone from being heavy and how that will impact your knees to now potentially dying earlier because you're jacked. But yeah, on the subject of life extension, bodybuilding is not the way to go about it. It will make you healthier than had you not done bodybuilding and weighed the same in fat, but realistically you should be lighter if you want to live longer. But as far as knees go, yeah, if you're a bodybuilder, you're going to be heavier than the average dude. Your knees are going to have more stress on them, especially if you like to run or do anything that's jumping or running heavy, and thus tibialis raises will help massively in the process of solidifying the knees. And there are other things that I do on my function day to make sure my knees are healthy. I do those backwards sled pulls, but I didn't do them today because of my groin. I do the side band walks in order to make sure that the muscles that run down the side of your legs, that attach to the tendons and ligaments that attach to your knees from the sides, are solidified. So the knees aren't just the patella tendon or like, you know, knee extension and flexion. That is one way that you can potentially get knee injuries, but the knees get injured from all angles. It can come from the hamstring tendon, it can come from the tibialis, it can come from the side, so the MCL, ACL, LCL, all these different attachment points can pop, and if they do, it's a real fuck around recovering from it, and some people never really recover unless they have proper rehab knowledge. A lot of people don't have that. So yeah, it's good to make sure that your knees are fucking granite, or maybe not granite, I don't know what the operative word here would be. Make sure I like to say dynamite, which is fucking stupid because dynamite explodes, but make sure your knees are titanium. That'll work. Titanium, because if you're a big, heavy bodybuilding freak, bulbous, muscular man of more weight proportions than the average, your knees will go if they're not solid. And especially if you're doing squats and deadlifts and shit too, that put even more further stress on the knees. Make sure that your knees are solid. And Knees Over Toes is a great resource for that. The guy from Knees Over Toes who had a knee injury or fucking had to get a knee replacement or whatever it was, I can't remember what it is. Basically, his knees were fucked, and the doctor said you'll never bend his knees again. Lo and behold, 2 years later, he's fucking doing vertical jumps and doing all these crazy like knees over toe squats and shit that would otherwise normally have someone blow their fucking knee joint out. So his exercise selection is actually great, and this is one of the only times that I actually generally believe in what you would quote unquote call functional training. I might be repeating myself from last week a little bit, but this is very important info, and sometimes information needs to be repeated for people to really get it in their thick fucking skulls. That's not a dig at any of you guys listening. This is more a dig at myself. I oftentimes need to repeat information, and sometimes even just talking in these videos and repeating information that I need to be doing. allows me to solidify it. Some of us are much better teachers to others than we are to ourselves. We'll tell people all the shit they need to do when we don't do it ourselves, or whatever it might be. When you're talking to someone about the things they need to do, you're far more articulate. It's almost like we need to then just almost pretend like we're talking to ourselves and pretend when you're trying to you're trying to change yourself for the better. Pretend that pretend you're talking to someone else. Pretend you're talking. I'm fucking rambling, but pretend that you are someone else and you're talking to yourself. Talk in the third person, like an egomaniac or whatever. Give yourself advice from the third person, and that way you put things into far more perspective. Because, yeah, oftentimes we're far better at giving others advice than giving ourselves advice. Hopefully that makes sense. So part of this repeating process where I give you guys advice that might be vital to you is also to remind myself that I need to be doing this shit. So, yeah, that's pretty much the end of today. That was a long fucking video. Probably a lot of rambling. If anyone's still here, God bless you. And see you guys tomorrow for more Piss and Vinegar. Bye-bye.